In this video, we're going to go over every single hero and give you a tip or talk about the most common mistake with the ultimates on all of these heroes, because using your ultimate correctly is one of the most important things you could do if you want to consistently win team fights and climb and carry games. So we're gonna break it all down, but if you enjoy the content, do me a solid and press that subscribe button. I can taste 90,000 subscribers and I would appreciate it. But let's jump right in, and we're actually gonna start off with Juno, even though the rest of the list will be in alphabetical order. Juno goes first. She's new, so let's talk about her. And there are a couple of things that people don't understand about Orbital Ray. Number one, it's going to heal you for 100 HP per second. It's going to give you and your teammates 35% extra damage. It's going to last for 10 seconds, and it's going to move forward. Now, there's a lot of problems that I see with people that are using Juno's ult as a pseudo Lucio beat or a pseudo Transcendence. They're using it primarily defensively, or they're trying to use it like it's a defensive ult, when in fact, Juno's ultimate oftentimes should be used aggressively, should be used to initiate team fights, close team fights out when you have slight advantage, or to kick a team fight off. It's a fantastic ultimate for allowing your teammates to be more powerful, to not have to worry about healing people up in that moment because they're getting a steady amount of heals. So you can be aggressive, you can deal damage yourself, you're going to do more damage yourself. So if I were to compare it to another ultimate, like Kitsune Rush is probably the one that I would say is like the most similar, where you typically want to use it when your team is at a full fighting force. You're not really trying to use it necessarily to just turn a team fight. Now, there can be moments where it could work, but you have to understand that just because you're getting healed for quite a bit does not make you invulnerable. It doesn't mean that you can survive everything. You can still get one-shot headshot by Widowmaker. You can still get stunned and killed by a lot of characters. You can still get naded and murdered. And there's other ultimates that can get you out of your ultimate, or that could still interact with you really, really favorably. So I would really say that as long as you're using this to where your team gets to leverage it right away, use it as an advantage, use it to potentially generate a kill, or even better yet, let's say their tank pushes in too far, so they're a little bit isolated from their team, you could pop this ultimate. And then now the tank is in a really bad situation because they're isolated and they could die. And if their team pushed in to help them, they're going to be walking right into your super powered team. So yeah, these are some of the examples I would give you, but try not to use this as like a I'm going to save my team ultimate all the time. It's really, really strong when you use it proactively to win team fights. And I think way too many people are missing these opportunities to use this ultimate. Next up, we do got to talk about Ana. And Ana Nano Boost is one of the most powerful and flexible ultimates in the entire game. But I do think that there's a lot of Anas that misevaluate how to use it, or they don't time their use perfectly, and it basically leaves some value on the table. So when I say it's really flexible, there are so many different ways that I think you could use it to get a lot of value. Of course, you could combo it, right? With like Genji ultimate is great, of course. Ramattra ultimate, really great. And pretty much comboing it with any ultimate, you're going to get quite a bit of value out of it. That being said, you could also just use Nano just to keep someone alive if they're under threat. Like if your Zen gets dove, you can Nano them to keep them alive. If the Nano keeps your teammate alive and allows you to turn the tables on someone else, that's insane value. Another thing that you can do is you can use Nano to start an engagement. Maybe it's a Doomfist going in. Maybe it's a Genji with the dry Nano going in to bait out Transcendence. There's a lot of different ways that you're going to use Nano in flexible situations. Now, the trick here is you need to evaluate whether or not you're missing out on another opportunity by throwing your ultimate away purely for tempo. So like tempo is when maybe your teammate gets a kill, or maybe your tank's going in and you're just nanoing them, right? And you're using it to keep the momentum up. You're giving them a lot of sustain. Then you could be proactive. You can add to that tempo because you're nanoing them. You could throw a nade. You could just basically pile on the pressure on the enemy team, right? But if you have one of these set combos, like this nano blade in your back pocket, and you're wasting all of your ultimates on tempo, you have a guaranteed team fight win that's like lined up for you, and you're purely not thinking about the opportunity cost, or the cost that you're missing, right? You're missing out on that play because you're using your ultimate for tempo all the time. So it's important to find a balance. And I find there's Anas that I've coached that just throw away their Nano at literally everything. And there's Anas that I've coached that hold their Nano when there's a key moment that they could really have a huge amount of impact. They could save someone. They could bail someone out. They could, you know, turn a team fight with Nano. So it's one of the hardest ultimates to master because it's super flexible. But I want you to just think a little bit more about how close your team is to winning. What does extra boosts of health and power do to a certain character? how can that change a team fight? If you start thinking about these things, you're going to be just fine on Ana. Next up, we do got to talk about Ashe. Ashe's Bob is actually simpler than it seems. One of the most powerful DPS ultimates in the game right now. And I would say that there's only really one thing that you need to do, and it's create 2 angles of pressure with Bob. You don't want your enemy to be able to hide from you and your team and Bob all in one, right? If your Bob is adjacent to you, that's not great. You would much rather have the Bob be past the enemy, and the enemy is in like a cone where the Bob's firing from one angle and you're firing for the other, or a really, really deep off angle. And the reason is because if you imagine like a piece of cover, you want it so that a piece of cover would protect them from you and your fire, or your Bob and Bob's fire, not both. Because then they can just take one step and line of sight you and your ultimate, and then they can just wait, right? You do not want to allow someone to just be able to trade time for your ultimate. That's not good at all. You want someone to be under so much pressure, and it goes back to the idea of stacking pressure like we talked about with Ana, where, you know, you're throwing Bob, it's on the other side of them, then you're shooting at them, you throw a dynamite at them, now there's a Bob behind them, they're on fire, they're trying to get behind cover from Bob and behind cover from you, and it's like rock and a hard place, right? You're just putting people in situations where there's too much pressure and they don't have great answers to those pieces of pressure. That's really what you want to accomplish with Bob and Ashe. That being said, there are some ultimates that can really shut you down. I think Hack is a really important one. That's pretty dangerous. Sleep Dart is, of course, very dangerous as well. Those are like the 2 that I think are ones that I would go out of my way to try to track and wait for. Like flush out the Sombra, know her location before I use Bob, or I'm even maybe waiting for her to try to hack Bob and I'm ready to shoot her to stop the hack. That could be something that I'm doing. And with Ana, I might even wait or try to bait out Sleep Dart, right? So these are some things that you can do to have more successful Bobs, but there are going to be some moments where all you need is more pressure. All you need is to pile on the pressure, and that you're gonna find that with all these ultimates, where there's a lot of like optimal ways to use an ultimate, but most of the time, I'm gonna say a lot of the time, it's not about how you use an ultimate, it's about when you use an ultimate. When are you adding to the pressure of a team fight? Is it in a situation where pressure doesn't do anything? Is it in a situation where you already lost if you don't get, like, if you don't kill 4 people with your ultimate? Those are obvious mistakes. But in a situation where, you know, both teams are kind of slightly bouncing on pressure, or maybe your team gets a little bit of a front foot, maybe they get a pick or someone on the enemy team's low, an ultimate, especially an ultimate like Bob, can topple the whole enemy team. Now all of a sudden, you know, the tank's low and the support's like, oh, I gotta heal the tank, and then all of a sudden the support's on fire and there's a Bob in the background. They have to sleep the Bob and heal themselves and get behind cover and heal their tank. It's just too much, right? And they self-destruct. That's what you're really trying to aim for here. Next up is Bap. Bap's ultimate amplification matrix is pretty strong. It's a little bit weaker than some of the other ultimates we just talked about. I think all the 3 other ultimates are far more powerful than Bap up to this point, but there are still moments where it can get a lot of value. I think there are some flexible moments. So for one, just using it like to kick off a team fight, especially if you see value right in front of you, you know, someone that's at a position that you feel like you can kill right away, someone that you feel like you can save right away by being able to heal them up very, very quickly, or just making it so that you're able to capitalize on the value right away, especially when like an enemy tank goes too far in, similar to what we talked about with the Juno ult. Enemy tank goes too far in, and then the amplification matrix makes it so the enemies can't really push into it, right? It's gonna basically deny anyone from crossing the space. Now, it is important that you make sure that you're back far enough, because oftentimes players will either wait it out, they'll back up or try, they'll wait it out, or they'll push past it. So you want to make sure that you're far enough back, but you also want to make sure that you don't pop it too soon, because if you do, then enemies are just gonna trade it for time, right? Most of the biggest downsides or the biggest failures of ultimates are ultimates that players can just trade for time. That's not a great use of most ultimates, unless that time is like hyper valuable. Like, oh, hey, there's 3 seconds left, they gotta touch the point. Okay, I'm just gonna pop it, because then I know they have to walk in that environment, right? Then that time is super valuable. Same thing with something like High Noon. Keeping space can be valuable in very key moments, but most of the time you don't want to trade just time for a super super valuable resource like an ultimate. His ultimate's pretty straightforward, nothing too complex. So let's move on to Bastion. Bastion's ultimate, I think the biggest mistake most players make with Bastion's ultimate is they just try to get too greedy with it. They get far too greedy with the ultimate. Oftentimes they are just trying to kill like multiple people, and they're really kind of trying to bite off more than they can chew. If you can trade a Bastion ultimate for like one Ana, I think that's a huge dub. Like, that's insanely strong. One Ana, because that Ana is the person that can nade and sleep you and stop you. So now they're dead. You could turn the corner in tank form and maybe get another kill. So it's worth a lot. It's really, really worth a lot. And another thing is, you want to time your ultimate with your team's aggression. I can't state this enough. Like, how many Bastion players want to ult in when their whole team's in spawn? Now, hey, you could get a kill, but isn't it way easier to kill like an Ana if she doesn't have nade, or like a Tracer if she doesn't have all of her blinks, or like a Hanzo if he doesn't have lunge? What makes people use these cooldowns? It's typically a team fight. It's typically other players on your team, or maybe even you yourself baiting out these cooldowns. So please stop using this ultimate in spawn. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And you could get a kill, but oftentimes this is like an ends justifying the means thing, where you're actually using it incorrectly and it shouldn't work, but you're like, hey, it worked in this situation. But it really should be something that you're waiting to use and double down with aggression. We go back to this dam example. I reference it in all my videos, where it's just, there's a dam, and every time you do something, you're adding a little bit of water. You want to break the dam. You want to overwhelm the dam. You want to keep adding on pressure. So everything you do, especially if it's something aggressive, it wants to be combined with other pieces of aggression. And we'll talk about this entire concept throughout this whole video. We'll pretty much repeat it over and over again. That being said, there's an ultimate that is very different, and next up is Brig. And Brig's ultimate is super, super unique because it's one of the best ultimates at being almost reactionary, or even like a counter ultimate. Something that is similar to like a fighting game's counter, right? You know, when you rocking that move, they hit you, you smack the shit out of them, right? That's like kind of what Brig's ultimate does. And it's a really, really great mitigation tool to deny someone an ultimate, but it's also really great to punish aggression. You know, your Ana is really low and they're gonna go target your Ana. They come on, jump on your Ana, you pop your ultimate, and all of a sudden they're the ones that are dead. They're the ones that get naded, they get stunned, and they get slept, and they just dead. You turn the entire tables on them, and that's really what this ultimate can do. I think a lot of people mess up this ultimate because they pop it and they're way too proactive. And I'm not saying there aren't moments where you can pop it and go and bash someone and kill them, right? And maybe start being really aggressive. If you see those opportunities, by all means, go for them. But I will tell you that more and more, if you're too aggressive with it, you are oftentimes actually risking death. It's actually not impossible to kill a Brig that is an ultimate. Even if you feel invincible, you're really not, especially when you start to climb the ranks. People will punish you more. And it's way easier to punish an opponent that already used their cooldowns to get to you. Like the Genji that already used their dash to get on top of you, or the Tracer that already used her blinks to get on top of you, are a lot easier to punish than the person that you're running at in their backline. Not to mention, you're leaving a lot of your teammates, you know, without your protection. And the whole point of picking Brig oftentimes is so that you can protect your Ana and you can protect these characters. So why not allow the enemy to come to you? Because if they don't interact with you favorably, you're gonna win. So force them to. And then when they do, you pop your ultimate and you punish them for it, right? Next up, we gotta talk about Cass. Cass's High Noon is a shit ultimate. It's pretty garbage. But there are moments where it can get a lot of value. When characters fly really, really high up in the air, it's fantastic for that. You can punish them pretty easily. It's really nice to just kill a single person. If someone is distracted, not near you, not by you, you have a high ground perch, you could definitely try to use it to catch someone off guard. But really, similar to what we talked about with Baptiste's ultimate, the best way to use Cassidy's ultimate is when opponents have to contest space that they don't have time to wait, right? Because that's what Cassidy's ultimate ultimately does, is it can delay for time. So if you're playing on a point and enemies have to come touch a point and like cough or anything like that, it can be a fantastic ultimate that you pop right before they have to touch, and then they're gonna have to come and play right into you. They have no choice to, and you know, puts them in a rock and a hard place, and they're just probably gonna lose. They're just probably gonna lose to you. Now, the number one tip I would give you though is be quick to cancel High Noon. I know it feels really gross to have to back out of your ultimate when you already invested it, but it's way better than just dying for free. Like, we do not want your Q button to be you just dying for free. So I'd pop it. If people are not in it and there's no reason for them to get into it, I'm not gonna hope and pray that they will. I'm gonna cancel it right away and back off, right? You don't want to sit in one place in a very easy to shoot at angle for too long. And if you didn't catch someone off guard in the initial moments of it, and there's no reason for them to cross into that space, then yeah, you already messed with the ultimate. It's already too late. Might as well just chalk it up and go for your next ultimate. Try to do something better with that one. Next up, we got to talk about D.Va. And really, D.Va is kind of simple because the best way to use D.Va ultimate is to remech. D.Va, oftentimes, especially if we talk about players underneath the plat rank or maybe underneath even gold rank, it's easy to think that D.Va has 2 lives, right? Oh, if I die, I have my mini D.Va and then I can get my mech back, and so I'm gonna go for these crazy big bombs with my D.Va bomb, right? But you don't really have 2 lives as D.Va. You have 99% of your impact on mech, and you got 1% of your impact on mini D.Va. Like, when you're a mini D.Va, you don't do anything that a tank needs to do. None of your responsibilities are being met at all. So you need to kind of think about mini D.Va as death. Like, and sometimes it's even worse than death. You're getting staggered, but you do not want to die. If you want a second life, your ultimate is your second life. You use your mech in its whole fullness. You get as much value as you can. You get demeched, you pop ultimate, you get a new mech, right? That is 99% of the time best case scenario. And are there going to be moments that I think that a D.Va bomb can get some value, like holding space, clearing space, things like that? Yeah, absolutely, I do. Similar to how we talked about if they have to contest an objective and there's key moments where they're between a rock and a hard place. I think that those are reasonable moments, right? However, ask yourself, is there a failure rate here? Is there a chance that I fly up with my D.Va bomb, trying to clear a car in OT, and then I get freaking murdered instantly? A Brig holds up a shield while contesting, blocks the bomb, and now my team loses the fight because I'm dead. That I couldn't have done with my full mech and then another full mech. So ask yourself these questions, because oftentimes people will think, oh yeah, OT, let's just throw a bomb here. Let's just throw bomb in all these situations. But you gotta be careful here that you don't get into this auto pattern where you're just constantly throwing your D.Va bomb and hoping that it's enough and risking your life and dying for free, because the D.Va bomb and getting a new suit, especially if you're throwing your D.Va bomb aggressively, oftentimes you're flying down right in the middle of the enemy. You could easily die. You could easily turn what would have been 2 lives into not even 1 life. So just please be careful here. And most of the time, just use it to remech somewhere safely, and it's fine. Let's talk about Doom. Doom's ultimate almost always goes in with his full cycle. So the typical cycle of Doom is you're gonna go in, go out, go in, go out. You're gonna constantly kind of cycle your cooldowns and build up that ultimate. Then you typically want to build an empowered punch, and then you're gonna go in with an empowered punch that is followed by an ultimate that is slamming down into another empowered punch, right? And the reason that you do all these things is because you can build an empowered punch, and the first empowered punch is going to bait out a lot of cooldowns. It's going to bait out Suzu, it's going to bait out Nade, or everything. It's pretty much going to bait out, ideally, a ton of cooldowns. And then when you ult again and slam back down, you could get a kill with that, or you get another empowered punch, and then at that point, you can decide whether it's worth it to re-engage again. And with your Doomo, you get to be super, super proactive with that first empowered punch and the whole combo. So that's kind of the whole idea behind your ultimate. It's not necessarily about, you could use it to combo and things like that, but the majority of the time, this is what you're using it for. You're using it to be an extension of your full engage. So you're soft engaging a lot. And most of the time, Doomfist will not go extremely all in or go for a big, where you're trying to hard carry and kill a whole bunch of people and wreck the entire team until they have their ultimate, because that ultimate allows them to continue the combo and go all in and go for these really, really massive plays. So if you want to play a more safe fundamentalist Doom, you're typically going to brawl a little bit on the front line, contest objectives, and cycle in and out while generating ultimate. Once you have ultimate, then you can decide to do something really, really big, a huge play after you get empowered punch. I mean, 2 empowered punches and you're slammed down. Typically, you're gonna be able to make something really, really big happen. And it could even be more than that. It could be, an empowered punch, an ult, into another empowered punch, into block, into another empowered punch. So it could be a lot. Like, you really could do a ton here if you're willing to go all in. So that's kind of what the ultimate is really for. And if you're using the ultimate for any other reason, most of the time it's gonna be wrong, because, like, yes, you could use it to save yourself, but then you have to wait much longer to go all in. You would ideally like to to save it for this specific thing the majority of the time, but it's also a flexible ultimate. If you need to use it to stay alive, sometimes that's a good idea. Sometimes it's a good idea. If you need to use it and you can generate a kill with it, sometimes it's a good idea. It's great to like pop it, see a Kiriko use teleport, use Suzu, you can kill her for free. There are some setup moments that you can see, but yeah, for the most part, you're using it to extend the combo or do a really big combo. Now, the next character is Echo, and Echo is a pretty hard ultimate to master because you can make it anything. It's going to depend on what the enemy team is playing and things like that. But you typically want characters that are going to get value right away or have some way to protect themselves, and maybe both, right? If it's value right away, so characters like Ana are actually really, really strong. Characters like Kiriko with Suzu and Teleport are really strong because they can get value right away even without their ultimates. So those characters are good. Characters that can get value as well, characters like Junkrat Queen with their shout are also particularly good. Even characters like Doom can be pretty decent. So characters that do get value right away are definitely a premium because you want to be able to pop the ultimate and then do something instantly. You don't want to have to wait to do something. You don't want to have to sit there and poke, and then I'm doing something, right? You want to be able to get flashy power, especially in the cooldown slot, and you're not even really hyper worried about your ultimate, because if you get to the ultimate, that's all gravy, but most of the time you're not even going to be able to get to the ultimate, and if you do, it was already a successful ult in the first place. So being able to turn into a Junkrat Queen, add a lot of pressure, shout your team in, that's fantastic. So there are going to be ways to use it flexibly, and there are going to be some characters like in the moment makes sense, you know, oh, I'm copying Mei, I'm walling off their tank. Like there are going to be some crazy weird things that you can do with the ultimate, but of course those are all going to be situational and really, really hard to just give you a general tip over. But also there's going to be many moments where you could win a 1v1. Like if you're in a 5v5 and there's a 1v1 that you're taking, or you're isolated in a 1v1 but you can win that 1v1 guaranteed with your ultimate, that's typically pretty good. Like I'll take like an off angle, you know, challenge a Genji, fight a Genji, he's deflecting, low HP, you know, I beam, copy, dash, kill him, and then I get to walk into the fight with a reasonable amount of charge as a Genji. I already got my value in, might be able to generate more value. That's just a hypothetical. So there are going to be moments like that as well. There's a lot of different ways you can use this ultimate, but try not to just copy things that you think will be crazy good ults, because most of the time you're just not going to even get there. The biggest failure rate that happens with Echo ult is just copying something and dying right away. That's what you really want to avoid, is copying something and dying instantly. Speaking of which, let's talk about Genji, who's next alphabetically. And Genji Blade is terrible. Never press it and you'll be happier. No, I'm just kidding. But Genji Blade is actually pretty strong. It just requires a lot of patience and proper setup. I think there's two main ways to get value out of Genji Blade. Number one, you need to be incredibly patient and pick your perfect moment. Diana is ISO, has no sleep, no nothing. There's no one that can help them or save them. Find the perfect moment where you can make your blade like an extension of a good engagement and a good piece of aggression. That is one way, but you have to be really, really patient and find the right moment. The second way that you can use Blade is an additional force added to a team-based aggression. Right? Like the best blades are always the blades that get combined with tons of aggression from your team. We just talked about like that whole cycle of Doom. Imagine your Doom does all that stuff while you're going in with a blade, right? So yeah, they can focus you, or they can sleep you, they can do all this to you, but they ain't stopping the Doom. Or, you know, they can do all that to your Doom, but then your blade is free. And the idea here is that there's too much for them to deal with, right? We always talk about like additional pressure. I've said it a million times in this video, but that's really where Genji is gonna shine here, because we know that Genji Blade is powerful. The problem is there's too many things that can kill you. You could get headshot, you could get slept, you could get your dash Suzu'd, you could get it immorted. There's a million things. So you need a lot of these cooldowns to not be up when you go in, or you need one person that you think you can guaranteed kill. I would say in general, if you're not too greedy with Blade, getting one kill and getting out safely, not trying to go for more, like literally just popping it, walking at an Ashe, she coach guns back, dash it or kill her, dash away right away. Don't let people trade you out. Don't let people respond. You got one kill. Congrats. That's one person down, and now we can go back in with full health and all of our cooldowns again. I know that doesn't seem like as great or grand as like you want a Genji Blade to be in your mind, but going for too much is often a way to get nothing with Genji Blade. And yeah, but let's talk about Nano Blade really quickly, because it's also really easy to mess up a Nano Blade because there's a lot of things that can mess up your one-shot combo. the slash dash combo, and there's a lot of things that can zone you out. Brig Whip is a really frustrating one. Of course, you have to play around sleeps. You can get punched by Doom. You can get concussed by Junkrat. You know, your slashes could be Suzu. There's a lot. So I would say that the age of going super fast on Genji is kind of over. You would rather get a guaranteed 2 kills than have a high failure rate. Because it's possible, like, if you go really fast, you could kill the whole enemy team, right? But it's too easy for that blade to go wrong that I would not suggest it the majority of the time. I would suggest you go far slower. You guarantee get those 2 kills and stay alive. You're going to win that team fight the majority of the time. And I would also not encourage you to try to hero blade very often. You know, unless you have to, don't walk into a fight and try to, you know, 2v5 a fight with Genji. No, we're not doing that. We're walking in with our whole team of 5, and then we're nano blading on top of that, and if we get 2 kills, we win the fight, right? We're not heroing. We're just aiding to the play and winning the team fight. I know this is not the hero fantasy that you're looking for on Genji, but I'm just being real with you. You want to succeed on Genji, this is what you need to do. Next up is Hanzo, and his ultimate is pretty self-explanatory. You're typically going to mainly use it to either combo, guarantee get a kill if there's someone that is like behind a wall that you know that they're there and you have info that they're there. But a really strong way is actually to cut off enemies' exits. As your team engages, if you put it like slightly behind the enemy team where they have to walk back into it. Like it's denying that space, and if they walk back into it, they die. It's kind of like anticipating where enemies will move in response to the aggression of your team. That's a great way to get value out of it. And then in a pinch, Hanzo's ultimate can be used to create space on cart. If your tank isn't there, you need to contest. I mean, it forces everyone around it away, so it does create a lot of space, and that's really where it kind of shines. But it's a pretty simple, self-explanatory ult. I would say don't get too greedy with it, though. If you can kill one person with it, that's plenty good. You can combine it with your own aggression too, so you can turn, you know, your ultimate into multiple kills because they're going to be flushed to an area that you're waiting for them or you're ready to shoot them at. So yeah, that would be my biggest tips on Hanzo. Illari or Iari, I'm gonna say for this ultimate, it's once again very similar to pretty much every other DPS ultimate that we talked about. You use it with aggression. You're using it to cap off aggression. You're not trying to hero play this where you're popping it and you're trying to clutch up and kill the entire enemy team. Use it to compound aggression. Use it when your team is engaging. Use it to where maybe you're not even the one that can follow up on it, but your teammates can. They can be the ones to follow up on it. They can be the ones to trigger it. And ideally, you're going to pop it right when your teammates start walking in, right when your teammates are getting aggressive. You pop it. You don't get too greedy with it. There is a failure rate with this ultimate, so you really want to get 1 or 2 squishies. That's all you want. You guarantee kill those people, and that's plenty of value for this ultimate. I know I didn't give you a lot there, but there's really not a lot there. Just, yeah. Don't get it deflected. Be careful about getting slept, and don't be too greedy. That's pretty much it with it. And time it with the aggression of your team. Junkrat Queen's ultimate. Now, this is a good one. This is a really strong ultimate, but there are certain things you got to be careful of course. You can get stunned. You can get punched out of it. You can get slept. It can get Suzu'd. So there's a lot of little things. However, it's a great ultimate to maintain momentum. You go in, you shout in, you cleave, you pop your ultimate. You can really generate a lot, but keep in mind the goal here is to get really fast value, and especially value on squishies. Ulting squishies is super strong, especially if there's nothing that can cleanse them. Most of the time they're gonna die. You also would really like to have this ultimate with your team's aggression, although what I will say is this ultimate is powerful enough. It's actually one of the most individually powerful ultimates in my opinion in the entire game, where it can really win a whole fight by itself if you land it correctly. Like there are going to be certain set conditions where there's 3 squishies lined up. There's nothing that can stop you. If you hit them all with the ultimate, you're going to get enough health back. They are going to be hurt enough and not be able to be healed enough that you're going to be able to win and clutch up the fight yourself. And the fact that Junkrat Queen can build this ultimate up so much if she's allowed to kind of run rampant really means that you're always looking for these conditions. But when you're with your team, you're going in with your team, you don't need the all-in solo carry thing. You just need to add a ton of pressure. And make no mistake, multiple people getting antied and taking a lot of damage, and with the Junkrat Queen in their background, that's fucking pressure, baby. That's a lot of fucking pressure, and that's enough pressure and enough space and aggro for your DPS and your team to go and do something with it and help you and engage with you, right? I would say that it's going to be less effective as an ultimate when you do it right at the start of a fight. You ideally want to compound a small advantage with this ultimate. You don't want to just walk up into a fight and pop ultimate, because if your opponents are at full HP, they can kind of back up, they can dump their cooldowns to buy time, then the ante will wear off, and then eventually they'll be back to the full fighting force, right? You want a low resource fight where both teams have already traded HP and traded resources and traded cooldowns, and then the ultimate comes out on top, because it's a really hard ultimate to last against when you are low on resources as a team. So that's just one little tip I'll give you. But yeah, great ultimate, and I want to see some fire ones in the Discord. Next up, let's talk about Junkrat. Junkrat tire, this fucking ultimate. Junkrat mains are magic with this ultimate. I mean, this ultimate has some of the highest failure rate in the entire game, where it's either gonna like pop off and get 2 or 3 people, or it's gonna do nothing. The biggest tip I can give you is, one, treat it like it's like, imagine if you're trying to creep around the map with 1 HP. That's how you need to treat it. Use cover, be really specific about when you're leaving cover, and be really quick about getting to the target that you're trying to get to. These are all really important things. Don't be too greedy. You're not trying to kill the entire enemy team. You're trying to get a couple of kills, 1 kill maybe, and that's it. And then, of course, you can pop it and then linger it around your body. Oftentimes, if you think that there's a diver on the enemy team, or there is a diver on the enemy team that you know is going to come for you, Echo, Pharah, Genji, any of these characters, Tracer, they're all going to try to come for you, and you can typically pop your tire, hide your tire, wait for them to come for you, and then punish them. But yeah, these are the main things. These are the things that I would suggest the most. It's there's definitely some crazy wall climb stuff you could try on this tire, some crazy movement you can try, but especially if the enemy team have hit scan characters. Good hit scan characters are just going to shoot this thing out of the sky. You got to be really careful about how you're traveling the ultimate through open space. The next ultimate is Kiriko, and we talked about Juno's ultimate, and Kiriko is kind of going to be similar, where you typically want to use it at the start of an engagement, or to kick off an engagement, or to compound initial pressure. Way too many times Kirikos wait too long to pop ultimate, and especially with Kitsune Rush, you want to get a lot of extra value out of the additional abilities that you're throwing out. So you really want to use it early, before anyone on your team dies. You're not trying to use it to turn a fight. There are going to be rare moments where you can, but most of the time you want your entire team to utilize its effect to kick off your team with an advantage. So be a little bit careful about popping ultimate on Kiriko defensively, or trying to like turn a team fight. There are going to be moments where it's possible, but you really want to make sure that you're getting the full value out of this ultimate. And it's such a strong ultimate that wasting it, or trying to turn a team fight around, that's a really risky play that I would only do if you are sure that you could turn that fight. So yeah, most of the time, try to get the full value out of it. Use it to engage, to start off a team fight. And yeah, this is a really hard ultimate to do wrong if you just make sure that you're popping it when your team is alive and starting the team fight. And make sure that you're using this ultimate pretty often. A lot of Kirikos will hold this ultimate for too long. It's a pretty strong way to secure a team fight. So yeah, trading this ultimate for a 1 team fight is fantastic. And then you're going to be on your way to building the next one. So yeah. Next up is Lifeweaver. Now, the tip I got you for Lifeweaver's ultimate is to not use it. Just don't play this character. No, just kidding. We're gonna say it is a defensive ultimate. It's a lot different than Kitsune Rush. It's a lot different than Juno ultimate, in the fact that it can be a very strong, just defensive, purely defensive ultimate, where people just get to be healed and play around it. And yeah, it's something that you want to use semi-reactionary most of the time, unless you're using it to challenge an enemy that has to fight. Like we just talk about objectives that they have to contest or things like that. You could pop the tree in advance. They walk into your team that is just supercharged. That's perfectly fine. But most of the time, you do want to use this reactionary. You do want to use this to save people that are under constant threat. You know, Winston jumps in, you pop the tree. Winston's fucked. He can't kill anything, and you're going to be able to kill him pretty easily. But keep in mind that if you pop a tree and you win the fight, you know, you're already winning the fight. Turn off the tree. You can cancel the tree early. You want to start building your next tree. Trees are really fast building ultimate, especially if you're doing a lot of damage and min-maxing your heals to damage ratio. So yeah, you pop the tree, you win the fight, cancel the tree right away, start building your next tree before you start healing everyone up and things like that. You'll get more trees faster. But let's talk about Lucio. Lucio beat, and even though this is like classified as a defensive ultimate, It's important to understand that this is not a pure defensive ultimate. In fact, some of the best ways to use this ultimate is aggressive. It basically just means that your team is not killable. That's what it does. It makes your team not killable for a set amount of time, and it's up to you and your team what you do with that. And being unkillable and being aggressive, turns out that's really fucking strong. You're gonna win a team fight. And best case scenario, an ultimate wins you a team fight. That's, I talk about winning team fights, but that's really like the golden standard. If one ultimate can win you a team fight, that's great. So like that blade that is coming in, that's gonna wipe your team, being able to shut that down and prevent yourself from losing a team fight is fantastic. But also speeding your team in and beating and collapsing on two people and killing them instantly and winning the team fight that way, that is also amazing. So there are lots of ways to get value out of this, but the thing about being aggressive with it, that's really strong because it's going to help your team build a lot of ultimates, and it's going to allow you to quickly like take the initiative and wipe the enemy team. However, it's hard to set it up in ranked play because people aren't always going to follow your aggression, right? They're not going to necessarily follow your plays. Using it defensively is more surefire, more guaranteed, but you also got to make sure that you're not popping it too late and it's actually possible to save your team, because it's really possible for you to, you know, pop it. You already lost somebody, you know, your team is in a bad position and you're going to lose the fight anyways. So you have to kind of make that call. Sometimes it's not reasonable for you to save your team. It's not reasonable for you to pop that ultimate. I know people might get mad at you like, why didn't you pop your ult or something like that? But if you know that it wasn't a reasonable use, it's better for you to just take the L on the chin, die on cart, come back into the next fight, use your beat semi-aggressively, and then just guarantee win that fight, right? That's a way that you could do it. Instead of popping an ultimate and there's a chance that it goes wrong or you don't even think it's going to go right. So yeah, but if you can communicate, amp up your speed while beating in and be more aggressive with your ultimates, I think that's one of the best ways to get value. But you really got to make sure that your team is on the same page. Maybe there's some communication going on. Maybe you're stacking, something like that. Next is Mauga with his cage fight. Cage fight is an incredibly strong ultimate, and it's really hard to mess up because it's going to get value whether or not you trap someone in it, whether or not you just use it on an objective, whether you use it just to split off an enemy team. There's a lot of different ways to use it, but the most guaranteed is just trapping a person that just dies inside of it. I mean, most people do. Most tanks just die inside of this ultimate. Most tanks don't want to fight a Mauga. They just straight up don't. And being able to trap characters that have mobility, they can't even move, they can't get out of it, that's just really, really great. I think most of the time, the only way that you're going to fail this is if the enemy uses a whole bunch of ultimates, or you trap characters that are not easy to control inside. You know, characters like Reaper, you don't ideally want to trap yourself with these kind of characters. But it's really hard to mess this ultimate up if you don't get too greedy with it. We're going to say greed is a problem with a lot of these ultimates, but, you know, you're not trying to trap everyone in with you. You're trying to trap 1 or 2 people in with you and then just killing those people. And then you just get to walk in. You killed that person with really low resources. You get to walk in and then just finish off the rest of the fight. And you're probably going to win that super, super easily. Start building your next ultimate. So that's mainly the biggest ways to use it. Just don't be too greedy with it. Try to trap 1 person. Think about your matchups in the 1v1. Like, you know, trap Rhines all day, every day. Trap Hogs all day, every day, if they don't have whole hog. And also, if you could track opponents' ultimates, that's also a good thing. Knowing an opponent has Barrage, as an example, or whole hog, that's a pretty big deal, and being able to know that means that it's a lot easier for you to set up an ultimate where it's just impossible for it to go wrong. Because like I said, ultimates are the only way that your ult is not going to get a lot of value the vast majority of the time. Next up is Mei. Now, Mei Blizzard is tricky. It used to be a lot easier to get value with this ultimate back in Overwatch 1 and 6v6. There was a lot more choke points. It was a lot easier to control enemies because they all navigated together. There was more enemies. But now, with everyone being really mobile, a lot of mobility, you would be lucky to get 1 person with this ultimate most of the time. And I think that's really what you should go for. You should wall off 1 person. They can't retreat, and then you just blizzard them. And you get that 1 kill, and you did it really cleanly and crisply, and you combined it with your Mei wall, and you just generated a free kill, and then you just move on. Other way to get value out of it is to deny objectives. If it's an OT and they have the touch point, you know, your ult is going to be extremely strong. Try not to pop it too soon, but if you can just force enemies to come into its effective range. Similar to how we talked about a lot of ultimates, there's a lot of ultimates that are like very denial based, where you use them in places where enemies have to contest, and that's where you get value from. Mei's simple as that. That's been valuable with Mei since the beginning of time on Overwatch, and it's still very, very valuable. And it's probably the only time that you're going to be able to get a ton of people in your Mei ult. And then, of course, you could combine this with a lot of things. You know, combine it with Grav or something like that. But really, I think Don't be too greedy with it. Similar to Mauga ultimate. Use it to deny objectives or use it on objectives that enemies have to contest. Those are all great things. Mercy ultimate. So there's not really that much of a bad time to use Mercy ultimate unless your team has already lost the fight. Mercy ultimate is great because it can allow you to get in position to res something that you wouldn't be able to res. So that can help you turn a fight. And it also can be a great way for you to chain heal or chain damage boost. And I think the chain damage boost is one of the most powerful things you could do on this ultimate. Pop this ultimate as a fight starts and then just, you know, give your team more firepower. It's similar that we talked about with Juno ultimate. It's similar with Kitsune Rush. You really want to just make sure that you're popping this ultimate when the fight starts because you want to use it so that your team breaks the parity and generates an advantage. You don't necessarily want to have to use it to turn around a lost fight, right? Like if I'm walking into a fight, I would much rather invest in fights that I'm already at parity or winning and not invest where I have to, you know, rebuild or reclimb the wall, right? If it's like a teeter-totter, yeah, a teeter-totter. I don't want to have to lift up my side to the halfway point and then lift my side up further, right? I want to already be at the halfway point or more before I invest. So that's something that you can just think about. On Mercy, I want you to really start thinking about the economy of it all. To be honest, Mercy isn't going to be the most mechanical. Everyone can pretty much acknowledge that. So while you're pocketing characters, while you're in the backline, while you're playing the game, I want you to start thinking about what ultimates does the enemy have? What ultimates are they going to use? How many ultimates do we have? If I pop this ult, what ults are they going to lead with? You know, these are the things that you should think about. If the opponent has some crazy combo, Ramattra ult plus freaking Nano, you walk into that fight, if you pop your ultimate pre-fight, they might just instantly... They're going to use that anyways to win the fight. So you might just like lose the fight outright. So some things you can think about. I just want you to start thinking about these things more. You have extra brain power, extra things that you're not focusing on. So I want you to start focusing on that more. Next up, we got to talk about Moira. And yeah, this ultimate just got buffed. It's really, really strong. Couple of ways to use it. You know, use it to initiate a fight. That's pretty obvious. You're just using it as the fight starts. You're using it to flank. Actually, surprisingly, really, really strong. Because this ultimate just allows you to move really fast. It's hard to interrupt. You can teleport while you're in the ultimate and you can just track and beam people. Now, I will say that it does take pretty good tracking, but if you like orb an Ana and just hard track her, you can just murder her. Now, especially if you have someone else going in the backline with you, like a Tracer, a Genji, a Doom, a Winston, you can shred people. And using this ultimate aggressively is so freaking strong, but you really need to combine it with extra pieces of aggression. We go over this concept a lot, but if the enemy is all grouped together and full, you popping your ultimate in the backline by yourself is not going to be enough. But if you either have a ton of aggression on top of them, or you know that the opponents are already weak, low resources, dying, like a Moira could be fighting a team fight, and as people are traded out, as people are getting weak, they notice that the backline supports are kind of low, maybe they don't have cooldowns, then the Moira is going to throw a damage orb, fade in, pop ult, clean up, turn the fight. So there are moments when that can really shine. I would say that there are going to be times where you could pop it to heal your team, but most of the time, that's the lowest value you're going to get out of it. Because you can always just like, you know, pump some heals into your tank and throw a heal orb, and you're going to heal your tank really, really hard. So you ideally would like to use the more aggressive side of it. The fact that it goes through barriers and characters and walls, and you can compound that aggression with teammates. So that's what I would aim for. There are some less than optimal ways to use it that you're still going to do, but you really want to try to set up situations where you can get the highest value and impact out of your ultimate. And so that's what I would be thinking about. Now, next up is for Orisa. And I would say you got to be careful of a couple things on Orisa ultimate. You do got to be careful of characters that can just get out of your ultimate. Of course, a lot of characters with mobility can. So you need to kind of pick your battles and be pretty patient. Find the right moment to pop your ultimate when, you know, the enemies don't have the cooldowns that they need. You can even use it as an anti-dive tool. I think you popping an ultimate when you're standing kind of near your supports and enemies are coming after them, it can be great. It jars them, it pulls them out, it allows your team to follow up on it. Even if they can get out of your ultimate, there's still moments where they can get shot or hit with an ability or something like that. And then there are some abilities that can interact or like mess with your ultimate. You know, a Mei Wall can rise you up and have you miss and things like that. So those are the things that I would be careful of. But more than anything, I just think you need to be either patient or you need to be on the front foot where enemies are retreating. They've already used all their cooldowns. You're constantly applying pressure, going in, using your ultimate, you know, kind of trying to double down on that pressure or use it more defensively, and use it as a way to protect or mess up a certain type of engagement, and then not be too greedy. I know I feel like a broken record saying that, but yeah, don't be too greedy with the Orisa ultimate. Let's talk about Pharah. I played a lot of Pharah, so I can give you some special insight into the character. Really, with Barrage, guess what? Don't be too greedy with it. No. You want to, most of the time, just use Barrage to kill a tank or trade with the tank. If I can trade with the enemy tank with my ultimate, I'll take that every single time. Tanks are so strong that you can just farm your ultimate, walk in above a door frame or something, and then just solo ult the Queen, solo ult the Zarya, solo ult the Mauga. Just kill them. Just literally wipe them. And that's great. That's fantastic. Now, most of the time you will die, but I'll take that trade every single time. But if you don't want to die, a couple tips I'll give you. Anything that can make it so you're harder to kill is busted with Pharah ult. Because Pharah ult has such high DPS. You kill tanks so fast. So if you're nanoed, so you're more survivable. If you got beat and you can concuss in and go really all in, those are great things that just allow you to go in, get in their face, and just, you know, just destroy them, right? Outside of that, you know, bubbles or grabs, things that can synergize with you. Also keep in mind that you don't have to be really high up in the air to ult. You can be right in front of them to ult. And if you have like a Sigma shield right in front of you, you can pop an ult on the enemy team. There are a lot of ways to like protect you, but most of the time you're really just trying to punish that tank. You're just trying to kill that tank, guarantee kill that tank, then try to fish for more. If you live, it's a miracle. But you really just want to kill that damn tank. Just farm it, kill the tank. Farm it, kill the tank. Kill the tank, kill the tank. Keep killing that goddamn tank over and over again. Yeah, I mean it's just such a strong play because tanks are pretty much everything. And having an ult that can just, you can decide that worst case scenario, I'm gonna fly in and I'm gonna trade with the tank. That's great. It's really actually really good. So yeah, so that's my suggestion. Ramattra. So with Ramattra, the big thing when you're using Annihilation is that you want to make sure that you don't get zoned out, right? So you don't want to get whipped out by Brig. You don't want people to be able to move out away from you. So a lot of times it's like you're trying to pick your battles. You're looking for the right moment. You know, you're poking in, you're brawl forming in, walking in with your nemesis form, trying to bait out some of these cooldowns where people are zoning you away, keeping you back. And then not only is it a really strong ultimate, but it's also going to give you a burst of health. So sometimes enemies are going to come in and try to be really aggressive onto you, and you can just pop your ultimate, be really defensive, you know, put your arms up and stay alive and just get constantly healed, constantly apply pressure. But yeah, you just got to be really careful about seeing the characters that guarantee can't get out of your effective range when you pop it, and then making sure that that you can't get zoned away or slept or something like that. So it's a lot of patience. It's a patient battle. You're trying to find that moment, or you're trying to find those moments where the enemy is overwhelmed. Once again, like most ultimates, it's not necessarily about how you use it, it's about when, and it's about when the opponents are under a lot of pressure, when they don't have a lot of resources to throw at you, or if they do throw everything they got at you, that's all they got left, and then your team can clean up. So yeah, Reaper. Death Blossom, the Feast or Famine ultimate. You're gonna kill people or you're gonna do nothing. There are a couple different ways to use this ultimate. Number one is you could try to wait for the perfect moment to bait out all these cooldowns. Most of the time, it's gonna be really hard to do that because your cycle is too long. Like the cycle of you setting up on the high ground perch, falling down behind an Ana, baiting out sleep, then you have to fade away, then you have to reset up, re-teleport, drop back down. She almost has her sleep again. Like, it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to do that cycle. And other characters, they're gonna be able to get their cooldowns back in time to deny you. So if you can't wait for that whole cycle, what do? Most of the time, it's just about the perfect opportunity, because Reaper kills so quickly that if you can find the right moment, then it doesn't really matter, right? If you can find that right moment to go in, you're going to kill them so fast that they might not be able to interact in time, you know, and even if they can sleep you already killed 2 people or whatever. And that really has to do with enemy attention. Are they looking at you? Are they aware that you're there? What is your team doing? You're looking for the moment where enemies are either heavily under pressure by your team so that they're backing up, you fall in behind them, you're trying to perch, set up, fall in behind them, pop an ultimate, or you're looking for the moment where enemies are low resources, but they just like won a team fight. So let's say they're fighting out on your front line, they killed your tank, They dumped everything they had. They're weak, and they're starting to walk in. As they're walking in, all of a sudden you're there, and they're too weak. They're thinking that they won that fight, but you're kind of there to turn that fight, right? I think Reaper has the potential to turn fights, and in fact, it's an ultimate that works better when there's more people. All that lifesteal, and oftentimes in a 1v1 it actually kills fairly slow for what it is. So yeah, those are the big things. Also keep in mind you can crouch spam when you're ulting, which is something that a lot of people just don't know. You can dodge headshots that way. I know it's a little funky looking, but you can actually do that. And then of course it reloads you and things like that. But yeah, those are the big examples I got for you. Most of the ultimate is about timing and setup. Trying to set up in the right place and then find the perfect timing when enemies are distracted and you have a little window where you can kind of sneak in and ult. I'm not going to say it's easy. Sometimes it relies on some intuition and yeah, it's going to be a little tricky. But if you could do something like get a bubble with it, then that's fantastic. You know, if you could set it up with a Zarya bubble or something along those lines, then you're really cooking there. But yeah, most of the time doing it blind like that, it's all about setup and timing. Let's talk about Reinhardt. Reinhardt Shatter. Very, very powerful ultimate. Super, super strong in the right situation. I would say that sometimes tanks try to shatter the enemy tank a little bit too much and can't confirm the kill. There are a lot of tanks that, especially if they have heals and resources, they're gonna tank it and they're gonna stay alive, or they pin them in a place where they're in danger. You gotta keep in mind that just because you're pinning doesn't mean you can't get freaking slept or naded or a million other things. So I would try to think more about instant value. You know, shattering 2 squishies and killing them both, that's real strong value. How can you generate a shatter that allows you to kill people without your team needing to do anything else? They don't need to you know, use a nade. They don't need to use any of their cooldowns. They just get to follow up with you and guarantee kill it. Or how do you use a shatter that can just, like, you know, you yourself can follow up on and kill? So those are the things I would think of. I'm not saying don't shatter tanks, but oftentimes a solo shatter on a tank can just be completely wiped away. And yeah, there is a habit that a lot of Reins have where they wanna be a hero. I think Rein mains and Genji mains have more in common than you think. And the reason is because they want to go for glory, right? You want to get a 5-man blade, you want to get a fucking 5-man shatter, right? But the reality of it is consistently solid ultimates that when you team fights, that's what matters. Getting the 2-man shatter, getting the guaranteed squishies, getting those kills, or getting the kills with the blade, getting the 1 kill with the blade and living. These are the important things that I think are really, really strong and things that Rein and Genji mains need to do more of. Not the most flashy thing, but to not try to sound like a broken record too much. But yeah, a lot of these, as you could see, a lot of these ultimate tips overlap a lot because a lot of ultimates do very similar things. They apply pressure, and you just want to find the ways to apply the pressure a little bit better and at the right time with the right amount of team pressure and resources. And not be too greedy about it. So anyways, let's talk about Roadhog. Roadhog's whole hog is actually one of the best parts of his kit. It's a crazy 1v1 tool. You basically get to win a 1v1 against like every single character, and especially tanks. We talked about how Pharah can just trade with a tank, and that's like good enough value. Hog can just kill a tank by himself, and he doesn't really have to trade. He'll just stay alive. So if you can ever set up a situation where you can just whole hog a Ramattra into a wall, or a Rein into a wall, or an Orisa into a wall, do it. Kill these characters. Just delete them. That's one of the best parts about Roadhog, is that you get to set these up. Now, you got to be careful, though, because, you know, you really want to have that true 1v1. You don't want to be in a situation where you're trying to kill them really quickly while you're getting shot at by a whole bunch of other people. You are vulnerable. You're not going to stop and heal. You need to guarantee get that kill before you can pop that heal. So yeah, that's really what you're looking for. You're looking for isolated moments where you can hook them in, whip them around a corner, whole hog them into hell. That's what you really want on Roadhog. Of course, you could do it with squishies too, but just being able to bully a tank in that way is very unique and very strong. So I would suggest doing it a lot more. Sigma Ultimate, Gravitic Flux. You mainly, I mean, there's not a crazy amount of tips I have here. I would say you want to whittle down the enemy resources a lot. You don't want to necessarily pop this to start off a fight. I think it's far better to pop this after you've already whittled down enemy health, whittled down enemy cooldowns, whittled down enemy resources, and then you're popping this. And the reason that you do that is because this kind of ultimate is a lot easier to survive against when you have all your resources. You don't really want to have to pop this when enemies are, they have everything. They have the Suzu, they have the dash, they have the recall, they got this, they got that. They have everything that they need to survive against it. You would rather they don't have a lot, and it takes everything they got to dodge this, or everything they got to survive this if they do. Of course, you have to be really careful about getting rocked. You have to be really, really careful about getting slept. So sometimes in a close fight, you just pop this ultimate when you know that there's something that can't hit you. You know, you see the Ana use the sleep, you're like, okay, I got a window. You see the Sigma waist rock, you're like, okay, I have a window. So there's a window that you can use. Of course, you can also wall and hide behind your wall. That could get broken and things like that. So you're not necessarily able to play around every cooldown, but there are going to be some cooldowns that can shut you down. The hog waist hook, okay, I'm popping my ultimate. So you're looking for these moments, and then you're really trying to hit characters that you're guaranteed to be able to hit. Pretty obvious stuff. I know thanks, Mills, for the fucking obvious advice, but you know, not trying to be too greedy. I have you heard that before? Take a shot if you heard me say don't be too greedy. But yeah, anyways, let's talk about Sojourn. Sojourn's ultimate. I mean, I don't even really know what I'm supposed to give you advice on Sojourn's ultimate. Build it, shoot it, hit headshots. I don't fucking know. Use it when your team goes in is the biggest one I can give you. I think way too many Sojourns pop this pre-fight. Like, they pop it when their team is walking up. Their team isn't in. You want your team to be in because you want to be from an off angle the majority of the time. And the reason is because your team's pressure will flush them into your line of sight, and your line of sight, you can like slice the pie a different direction. It doesn't mean that you can't play it with your team, but your team needs to be really proactively going in, and you would like, because the fear here is that the enemies can just hide. Once again, trading your ultimate for time, worst case scenario. So you want to put your opponents in a situation where they can't. They literally can't. If you can be even extremely proactive and like, you know, like one of the, I think is like on Blizzard World on attack, if you can like slide up to their high ground, and then now you have a high ground off angle, the enemies literally can't hide from you from. That's insanely strong. Being able to be really proactive like that is great. Of course, comboing this with stuff like Nano was great. It's most about timing. If you're popping it too early and then you have to slide way too in front of your team, and then, you know, the only way for you to see the enemy is to get way ahead of your team, then you're vulnerable because you're isolated. Just because you're really strong and you're doing a lot of damage does not mean you can't just get bopped, okay? So, yeah. You want that extra bit of pressure coming in with you. Soldier 76. So, with his... Not a lot I can give you. There's some situations where you could just guarantee win, like a 1v1 is fantastic. Typically, you want to pop this ultimate on the high ground. You want to be able to set up on the high ground with the heal station and then like rain down on enemies. And it's really well timed when your opponents are coming in at the same time, of course, typical. And you can apply this from a different angle. It's a super strong against flying characters, that especially when the Pharah uses her boost to get really high up in the air. There are moments where you can really pop this. I would look as Soldier for moments where you know that you not missing is guaranteed value for you. And that might seem obvious, but there are moments where it's like there is a high failure rate with your aim, and if you can just not miss, you'll guarantee get value. So like a great example of this is a Genji dashes at you and they're getting close to you. They haven't done a lot of damage to you, but they're getting close to you. Then they deflect. You throw down a heal station, pop your visor. They don't have dash, they don't have deflect. Now, could you lose that 1v1 to a Genji that's relatively close to you if you don't have aimbot? Yeah. But if you have aimbot, the odds of you losing that fight is almost zero, unless that Genji is just the GOAT. And that means that you're almost guaranteed to kill that Genji. He can't get away, he can't deflect. If you're not gonna miss your shots, you're probably gonna kill him. 99% of the time, you're gonna kill him. So that's just an example of, in that moment, if I don't miss, what value will I get? You know, if I see an Ana and she's moving through open space, I might try to shoot her myself, but there's a chance I don't kill her. But if I have aimbot, does she 100% die there? If the answer is yes, then I'm gonna get myself motherfucking aimbot, okay? So yeah, those are the kind of just general things that you should think about. High ground, off angles, heal station, these are other things, but yeah. Somber EMP, number one thing is that EMP is nowhere near as strong as it used to be, where it cancels people's abilities for a very long time. So what you really want out of this is you want to get singular points of value on an enemy tank or multiple points of value on a squishy. I think the best way to use this is actually just to ult a tank and just punish the tank, especially if that tank has an ultimate. So a great thing that you can do, a monkey jumps in, you hack the monkey. Right as your hack's about to fade, after a couple of seconds, boom, you pop your ultimate, you burn the monkey and kill him as a team. So the monkey died, and the monkey didn't get to use their ultimate. So they just engaged, they died. You're like, hey, I wasted my ult, I just killed only the monkey, but you killed the enemy tank, you prevented them from stalling, you prevented them from ulting, and now you're going to be able to clean up the fight. That's such a clean, efficient way to use this ultimate. And I think way too many people fail because they, one, go too far in front of their team and ult a whole bunch of people, and their team are just not in a position to follow that up. Or two, just ult too many people in general, and their team's focus fire is random. Like, it's cool if you can ult like 5 people, but you guarantee kill somebody because you're hard focusing one person. You pop the ult, you kill that one person, and then you get out. And yeah, you ulted a whole bunch of people, but it doesn't really matter if all that's followed up on because you got the one person that you wanted to get. But the problem that happens is that people will ult a whole bunch of people, and then their team will focus a whole bunch of people, and you will not guarantee get a kill on anybody, and you lose, okay? So when I talk about greed in ultimates, I think this is one of the biggest examples, most egregious examples where people are getting way too greedy with his ultimate because it feels good to hack a whole bunch of people, but it's better to pick a very specific target and get guaranteed value out of the ultimate instead. And especially the hack into ult chain, so goddamn strong. Being able to hack a D.Va and then ult them, never allowing them to use their ultimate to remech. Super strong, super busted. So yeah, let's talk about Sim. Sim's wall is actually one of the most broken ultimates in my opinion. Really great at splitting battlefields because your teammates can walk around the wall. You don't necessarily want to cut enemies off horizontally. You want to put the wall through, straight through the objective, straight through the battlefield, so that your team can use both sides of the wall and kind of use it like a Winston bubble, but like a perpetual one that's across the whole battlefield. It's really strong. That would be the way, because if you put it horizontally, then the enemy can simultaneously push through the wall all at the same time. So I would really say split it along those lines. And then you could even put a teleporter along it and turrets along it, so it's really hard for enemies to cross back and forth between it. That's really strong. And then, yeah, similar to a lot of ultimates, the only way to misuse Sim Wall is to have a whole bunch of people die before you pop it. Like, if you're about to engage in a team fight or engage an objective that's important that enemies have to contest, the wall gives your team such a huge advantage. So you just want to make sure that you're popping it before contact happens, before your team get in crazy fights, before anyone dies. You need to pop it before then. Torbolt. Big thing with Torbolt is you mainly are going to get the most amount of value with this when you're using it on objectives and using it kind of like we talked about a lot of different ultimates where it's a space creation ult, space denial ult. Using this when enemies have to come contest a point is really hard for the enemy because they are in a rock and a hard place, right? Similar to what we talked about with Ashe's ultimate. But this is specifically just space. So in the moments that you're trying to cap a point, deny enemies from touching a point, cap an objective, cap the Koth point, these are the moments where Molten Core is really going to shine. Outside of those moments, though, it's going to be pretty hard for you to get value out of this. Unless you're really specifically targeting somebody, like you're like, oh, hey, fuck you, Orisa. I'm gonna cover all around you with this, and then if you want to move anywhere, you're just gonna die. That's cool. Comboing this is also really strong, but yeah, it's gonna really shine on those objectives. Next up is Tracer. So Tracer Pulse Bomb, very fast building ultimate. Mainly what you want to do with Tracer Pulse Bomb is you want to fucking stick it. Surprise. No, I mean, all joking aside, most of the time you're going to want to blink in. You're either going to want a 180 blink or 90-degree blink, or just like blink up to somebody and then just stick them with the pulse and then recall. Like, that's the majority of what pros do, is they just get really close body to body. They blink in and they're basically touching. It's like almost like they're meleeing it, and then they stick it to somebody and then they recall. And this is a really efficient way to use it because it's a lot harder to miss. If you're trying to Kobe it or something like that, your failure rate is way too high. You really just want to get right up on top of somebody the vast majority of the time. And then, yeah, you can blink away in some cases if you have the resources, or you just recalling to get the guaranteed. Now, I will say, against some characters, you want to make sure that you're following up after the fact. So let's say you hit them with the pulse and then you recall. You ideally would want to recall and then immediately blink towards where they were, just so that you have a line of sight on them. Because if it's a cast that rolled or a tank, they're not going to be dead. So you want to be able to finish them off with like a little bit of a burst, right? You want to be able to finish that last bit of HP off so that you're not just, you know, pulsing them, recalling, and then waving high and walking around the map. And then you're like, what the fuck? How are you alive with the pulse? Yeah, you want to be able to finish that off. Follow it up, right? That doesn't mean blink on top of them and get into danger, but it does mean that you are, you know, you're ready to follow up any pulse bombs that you hit with damage. So yeah, something that you can get in the habit of doing, and I think it's a good habit to get into is just making sure that you're ready to continue to shoot targets that you pulse. Even maybe the pulse doesn't work for some reason, it gets Suzu or whatever, but you're ready to follow up and you're ready to be back in the fight, right? The other thing about it is it's just a really hard ultimate to hit. It's not easy. It takes a ton of practice. I think I've played a ton of Tracer. It's not my main character by any means, but I like to play her every once in a while. I still can't hit a fucking pulse bomb ever. Like, I suck at this character unless it's an honest scoped in. Really, the only way to get better with this is to practice and to go into the training room and set up a like pulse bomb. I think this is one of the best things you could do is set up bots that have good movement and just practice unlimited pulses. Pulse, 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 blink, pulse, blink, pulse, blink, pulse. Practice, practice, practice. Do that every single day. You'll start hitting crazy pulses. Practice your movement, practice your blinks. And really, if you want to get good at Tracer, this is kind of a little tangent, but Tracer's a character that like demands a ton of attention, a ton of focus, and a ton of specific practice. You're not going to get that good at Tracer if you're playing a million other characters, or if you're swapping off a Tracer the second you have to deal with any character that's slightly frustrating. Like, everyone knows Brig is frustrating, but great Tracers don't swap off when they see a Brig. They generate pulse bombs and they get value with that. They don't necessarily instantly fold to certain characters. So yeah, anyways, practice, practice, practice. Venture ultimate, pretty self-explanatory ultimate. You know, it's going to be able to get a lot of value in like team fights that are in more open areas. So you want to make sure that your opponents don't have great places to run away from. Ideally, you want to ult people that can't instantly get away from the ultimate. So characters that don't have mobility, characters like Ana, things like that. Those are like great targets. You can use it past objective points and still hit enemies, which is nice. So you can potentially clear whole lanes. And it's a pretty cool ultimate to use when enemies are like already committed in, and then you pop the ultimate and they can't really run away. So that, you know, they've already decided to kind of take one step forward, and it's going to be hard for them to like back up and reel away before you get the value out of it. Widowmaker. So with Widowmaker's ultimate, there's a couple of ways you could use it. The first way you can use it is to just deny the enemy Widowmaker their ultimate. Like, if you're in a Widowmaker 1v1, the enemy Widow pops their ultimate, you can pop your ultimate, and then neither player will get value out of it. It's kind of like a standstill. You can wait it out and then pop yours, but there's a big risk there because you could just lose the team fight for free unless your team is okay with just kind of chilling. But in general, you want to use the Widowmaker walls when you directly can benefit from it. So I know it's nice to be able to like pop it for your team and you think that's going to get you a lot of value, but most of the time you're the one that needs that perfect access to information, because if you have it, you can get a crazy amount of value, but there's also a small window between the time that you pop it and the time that enemies are vulnerable, because they know that you could see them. So you can't just pop it and then, you know, expect enemies to come peek into your line of sight. However, popping it when enemies have to, guess what, contest an objective, super strong. You know, your teammates know when enemies are going to try to come contest. It basically will disincentivize them from contesting. And I know that that's not the flashiest way to use it, where you're just like popping it and then no enemies peek and they just give up the point, but that's great. It's a lot of value. So yeah, it's good. Winston Primal. So similar to what we talked about with Dumo, where oftentimes Winston Primal will be an extension of a Winston's engagement, where a lot of engagements happen with Winston that are more softer engagements, and they'll be building up ultimates. And this is especially important when you're not playing a full dive comp. A lot of people ask, okay, hey, I'm not getting into games with Tracers and Genjis and all these characters that can dive in. How am I supposed to get value as Winston? All my jumps suck. I just die. I just get deleted. You take a lot more soft engages. You walk up, you split the front line with the back line. You're generating ult charge. You're walking up, bubbling, and then jumping away until you have an ultimate, and then you do something way more proactive, right? If you have a dive comp, you could be far more proactive with all your dives and engages, but if you don't, you can't expect to be able to play the same way, and oftentimes it's a huge extension on your ultimate. You're really trying to get the most amount of value from that ultimate. But Similar to Tracer, Winston's ultimate's really freaking hard to use. It's not easy at all. It's actually one of the hardest ultimates to master, in my personal opinion. And the only way you're going to get better at it is practice. You can actually set up a practice room where there's characters that are just, you know, floating around, similar to what we talked about Tracer. Have unlimited primals. Practice primaling characters off the map. Primal. Practice double juggling. Practice triple juggling. The better you get at this, the more value you're going to get out of it. If you get really, really good at juggling, you can make some magic happen. You can jump in, bait out all this cooldowns, kill 2 people, jump out. Like, there's just some insane stuff you could do, but you got to practice. It's not an ultimate that you're going to just be good at automatically. So yeah, that's my biggest tip for you. Wrecking Ball, Mines. So Mines should be used as an extension of all your good dives most of the time. Typically, all your good engages on Wrecking Ball, which we talk a lot about when I give Wrecking Ball advice, is making sure that you slam in front of the LOS of your team. That's a really, really important thing because they need to be able to follow up. And it seems obvious, but it's really easy to get ahead of your team on Wrecking Ball because you're so much faster than them, so you have to constantly be watching where they are. Now, to aid to that, slam in the line of sight of your team, but fly up, mines, slam down. So now enemies are slammed down into your mines within the line of sight of your team. They take damage from you. They take damage from the slam. They take damage from your teammates. They take damage from your mines. And they're going to freaking die, okay? So you want to compound these things, right? The more you can compound, the better, right? In addition to that, I don't want to see anyone rolling through places and just randomly mining. If you're going to mine space, it needs to be an objective that people have to clear. And I wouldn't do it against some characters that can clear it easily. Sigma can clear it pretty easily. Characters like Doomfist can clear it incredibly easily. So you have to be careful about who you clear it against. Some characters are going to have a much harder time to clear it. Like a Winston doesn't have an easy time clearing mines right away. He can clear them, but not right away. So you really want to make sure that if you're gonna use it just to generally deny space, it's gonna get value right then and there in that window. Card's about to cap the objective or whatever. But most of the time, I really like it as a compound of your good solid slams within the line of sight of your team, and just furthering to generate picks, generate kills, winning team fights. That's what I want to see. Zarya Graviton. The way that you can get a lot of value out of Grav is actually just not be greedy with it. Okay, all right. I'm sorry, but it's true. Zarya Grav can just get a kill, and a single kill can be crazy on Zarya because you're going to grab somebody, you're going to bubble, you're going to kill them yourself, you're going to get full charge, and then you get to walk into the next fight with 1, almost 2 bubbles and full charge. Some characters are the only things that exist that stop a Zarya from just killing everybody. So from a tempo point of view, Zarya can be a character that kind of snowballs really, really hard. On top of that, some characters are just really, really important to kill. Like grabbing a freaking enemy tank, grabbing an enemy Zarya, punishing them, killing them when they have high charge, so then they have to restart, grabbing a ball and killing them guaranteed, grabbing pretty much any tank solo when your team is with you, any dive tank especially as well, super, super powerful. So there's a lot of situations where you can grab squishies and just keep the momentum and tempo going and snowball the whole team. There's no one to stop you. And there's other situations where you can just grab and kill the tank, and that's free. The only time I would want you to like try to grab a whole bunch of people is if you're full charge with both bubbles and you think you can finish them themselves or yourself, or you have some type of combo your team's with you or whatever, right? Those are my big tips for Zarya. Last off, Zenyatta, Trance. So yeah, Transcendence is potentially super strong. The most frustrating problem though with the ult is when you are under duress. You know, when enemies just kind of come into your team and you can pop it and help your team out and protect them, that's cool. But what if you're under duress by a Sombra, you're under duress by a Tracer, you're under duress by a Genji? There are going to be certain times where you have to make the call to just pop your ultimate and not die. You have to make that call. Now, before though, you need to try to position yourself in a way that doesn't make it easy for enemies to interact with you, or doesn't make it easy for enemies to force out your trance. But still, you can't allow yourself to just die randomly pre-fight without using your ults. Like if I'm holding trance, right, for a Genji blade, I can't just hold it even if the Genji is gonna kill me. I have to pop it. Like, I have to make sure that I live so that we have a chance to win this team fight. Does that mean that the Genji gets to pop blade and win the team fight? Abso-freaking-lutely, probably. I might be able to interact with it. I might be able to Discord, do something. Maybe I'm going to go use the trance and go into their backline, be aggressive, or do something. But I don't have that trance to stop that blade. However, if you just are so committed in your mind, I'm not going to pop it unless he pops it. I'm not going to pop it unless he pops it. And then you die, and then that Genji just gets to kill you for free, and then they get to win the team fight without using any ultimates. That's really, really bad. That's one of the worst case scenarios. Because the longer the game goes on, oftentimes, especially if the opponents have advantages, you're going to be forced to use your ultimate in less than optimal situations as the game goes on more and more, and you're going to have less ultimates that you use that were impactful over the course of the whole game. So that's really the trick. And then, of course, in the last bits of your trance, you need to make sure that you're repositioning either aggressively or defensively. Don't just stand there in the middle. You know, you kind of got to consider those last couple of seconds as like a repositioning time, okay? But this is actually every single hero in the entire game. I gave you tips on every single character's ultimate. I know that there's a lot of characters that have overlapping tips, but I really think it's important for you to start to see the overlapping aspects of ultimates and the overlapping concepts that can apply to every single character. And when a new character comes out with a new ultimate, you can take some of the stuff that you learned here and apply it to that ultimate, because it doesn't really matter what that ultimate is. It's gonna have some similarities between ultimates that already exist, depending on what type of ultimate it is. But if you have absolutely any questions, do me a giant solid and let me know down below, and smash that subscribe button if you learned absolutely anything, and I would really appreciate it. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.